All right, hello and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo. You know the drill at this stage. We're on RT.ie, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. That's where you'll also get the RTGA and RT Rugby podcasts as well, and also the RT Sports pods. But right now, I'm in the company of Paul, Corry, and Richie Towell to chat LOI. And lads, I hope you're both keeping well.
Oh, good, Raf. Good.
Yeah, and Richie, last week I did put you through the mill in terms of having to think about the Armenia game. So I'm going to spare you this time. Paul, this is the first time I'm chatting to you since the World Cup qualifying campaign started. And obviously we know the result at this stage in terms of 1 point from a possible six, and it feels like it's all over at this stage. But then again, it's compounded by looking at the FIFA rankings, where I think it was last week it was confirmed we're down to 61st, where we're wedged between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Jordan, who in fairness, Jordan have qualified for the World Cup through the Asian Confederation. But all that aside, how do you reflect on where we're at, I suppose, as a footballing nation, even aside from the actual road to the World Cup?
Where do you start? Um, yeah, listen, it was extremely disappointing, Ralph, wasn't it? I mean, I was at the Hungary game, and there was an element of hope when you came out of the ground that maybe we had woken up after what was a really disappointing 45 minutes. But the performance against Armenia, I think, was just very, very worrying, and I'm starting to have a little bit of concern for particularly the players in that squad who've maybe been a part of the team for the last 2, 3, 4 years. They haven't had too many promising nights in an Irish jersey, and you can start to see that some of that pressure is weighing very heavily on their shoulders. And when the going gets tough, unfortunately, they seem to fold like a deck of cards, and that is a massive concern. There's not a huge amount of competition within the squad. There's not a huge amount of changes that you can bring in that will bring a completely fresh approach or a fresh impetus. It is a core group of like 14, 15 players that we're working with. So the only thing we can do, Raf, at this stage is hope that Hamer is able to do something between now and the next window in October to turn things around. The Portugal game is one I think that we will all fear from a scoreline perspective. If we can keep that respectable, I think that will be a good night at the office. And then you hope that we've learned our lessons from the Armenia game and that we can get some sort of positive result from that game that maybe builds some bit of momentum heading into the November window where ultimately the group will be decided. But I think on the basis of what we saw in the first window, it's very hard to see how we're going to have this huge change in performances and results. And it is slightly concerning for the players, I think, because the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to become to get results. When things don't go well, you can just see the confidence seeping from their game, and yeah, it's very worrying. Obviously, there's the bigger conversation about developing talent and getting players through the cycles and into the top leagues across Europe. But what we have on the pitch right now from an international perspective and the manner of our performances, I think there's major worry for a lot of people.
Yeah, and just a period of a lot of soul searching. But let's turn our attentions anyway to the League of Ireland, and starting with Friday's games. We're going to largely talk about last night's games more so, but just to give people a bit of context of what was going into last night. So Bows had beaten Waterford 2-1. Cork City had scored a late equaliser through Dara Crowley, like a brilliant one as well, to snatch a point at home against Shamrock Rovers. 1-1 draw there. Then Derry City and Shelbourne had drawn one each. Sligo Rovers and Drogheda United also shared the spoils, a 1-1 draw, and exact same scoreline as well between St. Pat's and Galway United, just about a few days, 5 days on from when they had met in the Cup when Pats had won in extra time. And speaking of Galway United, they were in action against Sligo Rovers last night, and this was the game I chose to watch because I just felt it was the most pivotal in terms of the fixtures, of the four fixtures that were on last night. And it went to Sligo Rovers, Cian Kavanagh with the winning goal. And I suppose, Richie, last week we were talking about Sligo Rovers off the back of the cup defeat to Kerry. And in the context of that, and also where they are in the table, this was a huge victory without actually necessarily playing that well.
Yeah, do you know what, Raf? We spoke about it, didn't we, after the cup game? Really concerned. I was thinking that can be a really, really damaging defeat in the cup, especially against a team from the league below, and especially in the manner and how they went about it. Obviously being 3-0 up, then losing 4-3. They bounced back brilliantly. They got a draw to the team who are absolutely flying at the moment. And then they got an incredible away win against Galway. I was actually at the Pats against Galway game on Friday. Galway were brilliant. Honestly, from start to finish, Galway were brilliant in the game. And I was thinking, do you know what?
I fear for Sligo going into this game now, because obviously they've been off the back of that bad defeat. They'd only got a draw at home to draw it leading into this massive game. I was a little bit fearful, but to go away from home against Galway and beat them, that it's a real statement there was. And I actually fear for Galway now, because they're just in such a rut form here. And it was actually the manner of the goal that they conceded. More on a positive from John Russell's side. They probably done what Galway do to every other team in the league. Balls into the box, and Cian Kavanagh got a lovely goal. But brilliant from Sligo to bounce back from such a bad defeat, and worrying times for Galway, unfortunately.
Yeah, I suppose, Paul, just going to that goal that Cian Kavanagh scores, Brendan Clark had been brilliant over the last couple of games before that, and even overall in the game against Sligo, he'd been really good. But there's a bit of a misjudgment, it seems, from him. But also, I don't think his centre-back seemed to help him either.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's cost them in the game. And unfortunately, when you come into these tight games, it is moments of quality or indecision that ultimately cost him. I find it very hard to be critical of Brendan Clark, particularly when you see what he produced on Friday night against St. Pat's, and he's done that throughout the season for Galway. But unfortunately, there is that sort of moment that just enables Sligo to go on and score. And once they scored, I mean, they've done so well. I mean, the points they've picked up, like Richie's mentioned there, like they've turned such a corner since it seemed that John Russell brought those bodies into the building during the last window. In the last 15 games, Raf, only Derry, Bows and Shamrock Rovers have more points than Sligo. So if you're looking at, 5 games to go, momentum behind sides, you would start to look at Sligo and think, like, they could be okay. And I'm not sure that's a situation that any of us saw going back a couple of months. They looked as if they were going to be fighting with Cork for those bottom 2 positions. And then on the flip side of that, you look at Waterford and you look at Galway, really struggling for goals, struggling for points. They have all the signs of a team that are getting sucked down towards the bottom of the table. And if you're looking at kind of what's left to play for within that playoff spot and the teams that are going to be involved in it, you probably think Sligo are going to get out of it. They have that knack of winning games. They've got that momentum behind them. And last night, like Richie mentioned, that was a really difficult fixture to head into on a Monday night in Galway. To come away with 3 points, I think that's just a boost that they need to take them away from that battle.
Yeah, because in terms of the bottom four at the moment, points wise, 34 points for Sligo, Waterford also on 34, Galway 3 points behind that, and then Cork City a further 8 behind that. And we'll talk about Cork very shortly. But in a way, Richie, a lot of the focus when it comes to Galway was often on Moses Dyer in terms of his departure midway through the season, and then an increased struggle for goals. But it's interesting as well, Patrick Hickey, who started the season so well, 4 goals in the early part of the campaign, and that was by mid-April. And then since in 17 games he's played for Galway since, he hasn't scored in the league since. So his form has almost mirrored Galway's sort of drop off in that sense.
Yeah, Hickey and Dwyer, they built up a great relationship with each other. Obviously, I watched both of their games against Pats, the cup game and the thing, and he was really on the periphery the whole game. He never looked like. Every time I used to watch Galway, I used to think he was such a massive threat. Long throws from corner kicks, crosses. Now I look at him and I don't know what his game plan is now. You could see he had a clear identity. He was the target man. They got it up to him. They played off him. They got the ball out wide. They got balls into the box, and he was always in there. Even against St. Pat's, I never really seen him in the box, waiting for the ball, screaming for it. I was thinking, if he's not doing that, his game is really limited. It is, and as I said, that they're really struggling for goals. They haven't won a game since the start of July, Raf, which is really, really concerning. As Paul said, Sligo are on a great run of form since the mid-season break, so it is worrying times for Galway. Saying that, obviously, I said I did watch them against Pats, and I thought they were absolutely fantastic. They probably deserved more from the game than a draw, but then they bounce into the next game and they lose a big, big game. So, listen, John Caulfield is a great manager. He's been around the league a long time, so I'm sure there won't be any panic setting in yet, but it is worrying times down there for them.
Yeah, and it seemed like they were carrying good form into the Sligo game in the sense of the first 10 minutes they started really, really quickly, and then it became a bit more even, and then even towards the end, Darren McGuinness had an effort point blank, which I think Hickey played a part in with a flick on that Stephen Walsh flicks on, and then the goalkeeper Sam Sargent does really well to get his leg out, and these are the kind of moments that swing things. And for Cork City as well, going to St. Pat's, having got a creditable draw, Paul, against Shamrock Rovers a few days earlier, again, the challenge was to try and nick another point, but then Joe Redmond's header early on, and then the floodgates try to sort of break open, and what has been a good clean sheet record in recent times just falls apart pretty much for Cork.
Yeah, and that is the concern, isn't it? That they have conceded a lot of goals, Raf, throughout the course of the season. And maybe the hope of the point against Shamrock Rovers on Friday was maybe something that they were looking to build on. But I think when you concede early against Pats, and Pats can't do that to you. Like they do have the players there that can really punish you if you give them opportunities to do that. But I think, Cork will reflect, and you look at, there's the Joe Redmond goal from the set piece. You can definitely prevent that. I think there's a goal in the second half. Melia's one where Feely just gives the ball straight to Pats. Jamie Lennon slides Melia in, and they're the ones that you find it hard to accept. Like, you don't mind if it's a brilliant bit of play and Pat's really carve you open. It's moments, individual errors, set pieces, lapses in concentration. That is ultimately what has killed Cork throughout the course of the season. And unfortunately now, albeit they got a great point against Shamrock Rovers, and probably a little bit lucky, Raf, to be honest, to get that point. I thought Shamrock Rovers created a lot of chances another night, probably get the second goal and it becomes a more comfortable finish to the game. But the hope that they may have secured from Friday was certainly put out last night against St. Pat's, and the gap is just way too big now to Galway, Waterford and Sligo to have any sort of hope of securing that playoff spot. You just hope that the damage from last night doesn't carry itself into the FAI Cup semi-final. Like, that's going to be a huge night for everyone in Cork down at Turner's Cross, be packed out. You hope that there isn't like damage carrying over from that game, that Pats have done us over last night. There's a massive gulf between the two teams. Mason Media's caused us a lot of problems. They got to knuckle down now, focus on that game, because that is ultimately where their season is going to hinge. Like, there's just no way that they can close that 8 point gap to Galway and Waterford.
No, it's a huge gap to try and surmount. But in terms of the Pat side of things as well, Richie, I suppose some good performances. Cian Levy again, as Twinkle told as ever, he gets a goal towards the end, and then obviously, as we mentioned, Joe Redmond opening the scoring, but Simon Power obviously played a big role in Mason Melia's first goal. And it was Mason Melia's birthday last night, so I think he's actually technically an adult now at 18, and obviously he has that Spurs move coming up. And then you think about what age he is; he's going for the golden boot. He's on 12 goals. He's just behind Padraig Hammond, and even the different type of quality goals he scored last night, very different from each other, but again showcases everything he has.
Yeah, look, Mason's been absolutely brilliant this season, and see, for someone so young, the consistency that he showed and the maturity in his game has been so impressive for me. I love everything about him. I love the way he holds the ball up. I love the way he's able to drive forward. There's a reason why he's gone for that much money, Raf, isn't it? Because he can kind of do it all. You see, anytime he gets half a chance, like the two goals he got against Cork, they were the second one's a clear-cut chance. It was a great finish, but the ball from Simon Power is absolutely fired in for his force, and you can see the desire to get his head on it, and just the quality that he has behind the finish. So he's been absolutely fantastic. And then obviously he's very lucky there as well that he has the likes of Cian Levy, he has Chris Forrester, Simon Power. When them players are on form, Brandon Cabinet as well, when them players are on form and you have someone like Mason Melia to feed the ball through it, or when you get it out wide, the raw pace and power. You mentioned Cian Levy, Twinkle Toes. He's been absolutely fantastic over the last couple of weeks. I've seen Stephen Kenny reference Maradona-esque in his style of play, which, do you know what? He's been brilliant. He has that low centre of gravity. He dribbles the ball really well. He was, against Galway, he was probably the only Pats player that probably could have held his head high. He was excellent in the game, he was. And then he's obviously continued that form into the game against Cork. And look, as I said, when you have the likes of him and Simon Power, players with raw pace and power, when they're on form, then it clicks for Pats. And it's something that they were missing in the early part of the season, but you can see slowly that they've been building up momentum, and Pats are actually in great form at the moment.
Yeah, and very much in the race for Europe, as are Drogheda United after a 2-1 win over Shelburne. But I suppose off the pitch first, before we get into the game, Paul, it was interesting from Drogheda's point of view in terms of the deals they did in terms of contracts, which is Warren Davis and Luke Dennison both signing 2-year deals, and obviously Dennison proving his worth again last night. Brilliant save to stop Meepo at point blank range, and at the same time, maybe someone could argue that's maybe a Meepo missed chance as opposed to a save. But again, great goalkeeping anyway, I think is the main takeaway. But what does it say about Drogheda that those two lads are looking at that club and deciding, they're going to stay on and try and push on as part of that.
Yeah, I think that's vitally important. Like for Drogheda to try build on what was an unbelievable season last year, and again, like they've put themselves back in contention for Europe with that win last night. If you're to have somewhat of a consistent go with these type of things, you need to be keeping your best players in the building. We've obviously seen over the last kind of 12, 18 months, they've lost a couple of their better players, whether it be loans or whether it be different situations. To keep Warren Davis and Dennison in the building is absolutely massive. I mean, their game is very much built around kind of that low block being difficult to play against. Dennison has come up big for them in certain moments, not only in the FAI Cup with the penalty shootout up in Derry, but also in the league in different moments where he's pulled off brilliant saves. And at the other end of the pitch, Warren Davis, if you are going to play that low block and you want to counter attack with pace, Warren Davis is that perfect outlet at the top end of the pitch. So you can start to put the pieces of the jigsaw together even for next season, Raf, when you have those players in the building. And it also means that if somebody wants to come and take a Warren Davis, they're going to have to pay money for him because he's tied into a contract. So brilliant for Drogheda, and that's, I guess, what the investment has enabled them to do. And last night, like the game against Shells was so typical of Drogheda in the sense that, you get the first goal, you sit deep, you make it hard for Shells to break you down, and then you pop up with another goal. I know it was an Evan Caffrey OG, but it was something that they consistently work on, their set pieces, winning flick-ons, making it difficult for oppositions. So Shells would be devastated with the manner of the goals. Like the first one, Kareem's finish is brilliant. He puts it in the top corner, but so uncharacteristic of JJ Lunny to give the ball away in the first place. And for the second one, I think Ledwidge and Paddy Barr are too reactive. They don't anticipate the knock on. And I think it's Andrew Quinn then who kind of flicks it on and gets the second goal. So it's brilliant for Drogheda. I was kind of looking at it maybe 7 days ago thinking they're a little bit too far off the likes of Bowes and Derry, and maybe Pats would be more inclined to go and make that break for a European spot. But that win last night puts them right back in the mix. They still have to play Derry, they still have to play Bowes. So ultimately, if you can pick up enough points in those games, you could well have a situation where Drogheda are potentially going for that fourth position if it becomes available for Europe, or even better, maybe looking at third position. But the job Kevin has done there is just incredible. I'm delighted that he's got the backing with those contracts.
Yeah, 23% possession last night, so great opportunism as you mentioned in terms of the goals there, Paul. But I suppose Richie looking at it as well now, as Paul has said, they've got Derry this Friday and then Bowls at the very end of the season. In between times, they've got the three league fixtures against Waterford, Cork City, and Galway United, which on paper they would go into with a bit of confidence, but from their previous meetings, the 27 points that have been available from the previous meetings, they've only collected 14 from those, which isn't, I suppose, it's not a bad total. It's been kind of quite average, quite a good few draws in that as well. And the only defeat against those three that they've had has been against Galway previously. So it looks like a great opportunity for Drogheda against those three, but at the same time, it seems a little bit tricky as well when you look at their previous record over the season.
Yeah, but Drogheda thrive off that, Raf. They love, like you see even Kevin's interviews after the game, he loves being the underdog in games he does. And I'm sure he uses that as fuel to the fire when he's speaking to his players. I know he's going into the dressing room thinking, saying to the players, everybody's writing you off saying you aren't going to get Europe. Let's show them what we're all about. And you can see it. You can see how together they are. As you said, 23% possession. You would think that Shells would have won the game 3 or 4-0 handy when you look at those sort of stats. But as soon as Drogheda get in front, as Paul said, they go into that low block and they're so hard to play against, especially up in Eamon DC Park. It's such a hard place to go. Kevin has them so well drilled, and then you even see for the second goal, I've been so impressed with Conor Keeley and in particular Andy Quinn as well. I think he's been absolutely fantastic, not just defensively, but you see the goals that comes in. I know that goes down as an own goal, but it's going into the back of the net anyway. And he's always there or thereabouts when the ball's in the box. And that's exactly, he reminds me of a little bit of Brian Gartland when we were at Dundalk. He was always a massive threat from set plays. You've seen like the acrobatic goal he gets against Shamrock Rovers in the Cup. He can kind of do all he can. So I've been really impressed with them two as a partnership. And you can see how solid they are at the back. And vice versa, when you look at Shells, that's what they were built on last season. They were built on clean sheets, solid at the back. And this year they've been so inconsistent, 14 draws. I even see, look, I know Paul said it's very uncharacteristic from JJ Lunny with the pass back, which it is. It's not like him. But it's the reactiveness then after where Paul's talking about. I want Paddy Barrett to come out and defend that. He lets Kareem take a touch, and then bend it into the corner. He kind of turns his back on it as well. I want my centre half to be engaging with him outside the box, making him make a decision. It's just very, very uncharacteristic from Shels, but from a Drogheda point of view, they've been doing absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and obviously Shels, probably there's at least an eye on the 2nd of October when BK Häcken of Sweden come to Tala Stadium for the first of those Conference League games. It's obviously going to be a huge occasion for Shels, but I suppose in terms of domestically, Paul, what Shels have next is Waterford, and what is coincidental as well, last night's defeat was their first defeat in the league since they lost to Derry on the 20th of June, which actually happened to be Damien Duff's last game in charge, and then coincidentally they were playing Waterford straight after again, so just like that time when Waterford was the team they were trying to bounce back in, this is probably a match that grows a little bit in importance if they have any hope of trying to qualify for Europe next season. And they need to be really getting 3 points, I suppose, in this one.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at Chels and putting something together as regards kind of like a project around the football club, you don't want to go from being involved in the group stages to having absolutely no European football. So how do you do that? I mean, the next 2 games are so important. They play Waterford at home, and then they follow that up with Sligo Rovers at home. So there's the opportunity there to get 6 points before you head in towards some of the crucial games where they still have to play Bows. They still have to play St. Pat's. So they could have an opportunity if they were able to build up ahead of steam and maybe find levels that they haven't done consistently throughout the year. You mentioned like Raf, they hadn't been beaten since that time in Derry, and they have, I think, turned a bit of a corner. Like there has been a bit of a reaction since Joey went into the building, but I think to Richie's point, like what concerns me about Shels is just the manner of the goals that they concede. Like last night was 2 really sloppy ones. They've already conceded 5 more goals in this season than they did in the entire of the 2024 season. So you don't have to look too far to see what has changed between what was such a successful year last year to now, being very much stuck in the middle of the table. They just haven't got that same sort of solidity that they did last year. And some of that is down to the fact that they're trying to be a little bit more expansive. They're trying to make the pitch a little bit bigger, but I don't think there's that same sort of bite or aggression in their play when they don't have the ball. And that's something I think Joey will want to get back into his team. Like there's been individual errors as well. I thought like some of the games in Europe, they were really lucky not to concede goals, particularly when you think back up to that game in Belfast, the first time round against Linfield, trying to play up in the back, just gifting chances to opposition. So that's where they need to iron things out. Do they have it in them to do that between now and the end of the season? I don't think so. I just think there's too much of a gap there. I know they have a game in hand, but to the likes of Bows and Derry for them to pick up points, they haven't done it consistently throughout the season. There's no real major indication that they're going to be able to do that. They're going to have to juggle European games. Last night was a massive blow at them. If they'd won last night, you maybe think, okay, they're really, really within touch and distance, but the performance, like there was actually a great opportunity. Daniel Kelly had a brilliant opportunity while it was 2-0 to get a goal in around the 75th minute. And if he got it then, you thought, okay, there's maybe a bit of momentum there to create and get a second goal. But it's been like nearly moments for Shels this year in the league. I just hope that they can produce their best stuff when they get into that Conference League.
Yeah, and speaking of difficult runs, Waterford are obviously losing 2-1 at home to Shamrock Rovers last night. Tommy Lonergan got a late goal in that one. But I suppose, Richie, from their point of view first, before we talk about Rovers, and then obviously the Dublin derby that's coming up, Waterford's now 6 defeats and a draw in all competitions since they beat Galway 4-2 away. So there doesn't seem to be a kind of end in sight at the moment in terms of their form, and obviously they have Shels next.
I know, a couple of weeks ago, Raf, we were actually talking, they were pretty close to St. Pat's, they were in the league, and we were thinking they maybe have an outside chance of getting Europe. And now you look at them and you think they're probably nailed on for the relegation playoff. As you said, the form that they're in is absolutely terrible. 4 losses in a row now in the league, really worrying for the manager down there. And I think it's the manner in the goals you can see. You see the goal that they conceded against Bohemians. It's just a punt up in the air, and the keeper, it's a standard catch that he's probably made 100, 200 times in training. He's just let it go through his fingers. And the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope for Waterford is that they have Padraig Hammond up front. If they didn't have him, I think they'd be in a worse predicament than Cork at the moment, because Padraig Hammond he's only getting half chances in games, and he seems to be taking them. So he's done absolutely incredible. I know he's a proper leader in the dressing room as well. So if there is a little bit of hope for them, it's that he stays fit for the remainder of the season, because they're just terrible for him.
Yeah, and I suppose from the flip side, in terms of the defensive side, Paul, for Waterford, Shamrock Rovers is opening goal, the one that Josh Honahan scores. I know there's a lot of talk about how long throws are back in vogue. I think the England manager Thomas Tuchel has said that, and like Sam Allardyce and the likes are vindicated now. Their philosophy has taken over football again, and we see Pep Guardiola playing about 10 defenders there against Arsenal at the weekend. But all that besides, the way they conceded, I suppose that first goal that I suppose opened things up for Shamrock Rovers would be hugely disappointing from a defensive point of view.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a trend there, isn't it? When you look at kind of the teams who are struggling down the bottom half of the table, they give up goals and they give up chances. And that was a perfect example last night. Like Shamrock Rovers has so much quality on the pitch, but it's a long throw that doesn't have any real imagination behind it other than it's a ball into the box, somebody wins a flicks on, and Honan comes around the back. They are basics that can certainly be prevented. And it's well worked from Shamrock Rovers. Don't get me wrong. I don't know where or how long throws have become so sexy over the last 2 weeks, but it seems like every team, whether it be in the Premier League, League of Ireland, or international sides, seem to be doing it. But yeah, they're moments that Waterford look back on and think, we need to be better there. We need to really stay tight to people and be aggressive in your defending. But yeah, I'm with Richie. Like, if it wasn't for Padraig Hammond, you would be seriously concerned for Waterford slipping down the table. And you look at the goal, like you've mentioned, and you think, okay, they're not great indications. The only hope that they have is that maybe Galway and Cork are probably a little bit, they're also suffering, and they're maybe a level even below them. But it was a great win for Shamrock Rovers. I don't think Stephen Bradley is getting enough credit. I think it's maybe just an expectation that he just keeps making changes to the team and brings new blood in and seems to get them to a level. Danny Grant is such a perfect example of that. Watched him quite a lot down in Dalymount Park, and everybody knows what Danny Grant's game is. He's powerful, he's quick, he takes players on. You didn't really see a huge amount of that towards the tail end of his time in Bows, and he's come into Shamrock Rovers and he just looks a new man. The goals he's contributed fits perfectly into that system, which I might have had question marks about. I thought they were going to lack pace in wide areas at the beginning of this season. I think Danny Grant's brought so much energy, and just throughout the squad, like there's so much quality. They seem to just steamroll teams when they get into head of form like this. And I think maybe what Bradley has done flies under the radar, and people are maybe taking it for granted, and they just expect that they churn out these results. For him to consistently lose players and bring new blood in and be able to produce results is a serious achievement.
Yeah, and I suppose 4 points from a possible 6 over that long weekend, Richie, I suppose keeps them ticking over very nicely. So maybe the only, I suppose, chink in the armor from those two games, probably the concession to 2 late goals, one that was more costly and the other that ended up being just a consolation.
Yeah, it was actually, there were 2 very preventable goals as well. I know Stephen Bradley spoke about the one down at Turner's Cross. Listen, it's a great strike from Crowley, but it's straight down the line. McGinty, he's been brilliant for Shamrock Rovers, but he should save it. Do you know what I mean? It's one that he would save 99 times out of 100. And then the one that they concede, Tommy Lonergan. And listen, it's a great volley from Lonergan, but clearly just, you can see he tries to head it, but he just mistimes it a little bit. The ball falls to Lonergan. But like that, it's only a consolation goal. I think that they're really comfortable in every single game I ever watched them. I never watch them and think, they look like they're very vulnerable at the back. They have the likes of Cleary, Lopez, Lee Grace, lads who have been there for years, proper leaders in the dressing room. And like as Paul said, that allows them then to be able to blood the young talent in with that. Like I know Corry O'Sullivan, he scored down in Turner's Cross, which is absolutely brilliant for him. But like that, they can bring players in like that, Danny Grant, lads who haven't been there over the last while, and they can see, right, this is what needs to be done. This is the standards that's set, because Stephen Bradley's built a culture there and the lads have built a culture there, and everybody has to buy into it or else they're snookered.
Yeah, and then I suppose similar to Shells, they have other things on the agenda coming up. So 2nd of October, obviously they've Sparta Prague away. But before that, of course, there's a small matter, Paul, of a derby, which actually could end up being decisive just based on the permutations, looking at it at the moment. Obviously, Rovers can win the league, but they would need a couple of things to go in their favour. Beat Bows, and then hope Derry lose to Drogheda as well. And then they actually would win it with with many games to spare at this point. So how do you feel they'll approach it? Because also with the context of Bows having had I suppose the run of wins over them this season so far.
Yeah, I think that will definitely be at the forefront of a lot of people in Shamrock Rovers is the record against Bows over the last couple of seasons hasn't been, well, not the last couple of seasons, but in particular this season has been great. And listen, it's been a very flawless season. Top of the league, still involved in the FA Cup, in the Conference League group stages. I think the derby against Bows is probably one now where you just want to focus on getting 3 points. And for that reason, Raf, I think he will go full strength. Bradley has the luxury now of being able to pick and choose where he wants to play players and tee people up for the really important games. But I think they'll go, full steam ahead for this Bows game. Particularly, like, he'll want to wrap up the league. I know the league is done and dusted, but he'll want to make sure that it is officially done as soon as possible to allow them to really focus in on the Conference League. And I think the FAI Cup is going to carry as much weight as the Conference League, just on the basis that he hasn't done a League and Cup double. For all the success they've had, they probably haven't won enough FAI Cups. But make no bones about it, when they play Bows this Friday night, it is very much going to be about getting his strongest 11 on the pitch and trying to get a win over their biggest rivals. And if they could win it on a Friday in Tala against Bows, with Derry coughing up points, that would literally be the most perfect equation and perfect finish to the domestic season. But they're looking brilliant. I think they'll do. I know the draw hasn't been very favourable in the Conference League, but I think they'll do well in it. They will certainly put forward a really good representation of themselves in the league, and I would expect that they would pick up points along the way too.
Yeah, and again, the permutations. So if Shamrock Rovers were to beat Bows and Derry were to lose against Drogheda, Shamrock Rovers would be on 63 points with a game in hand, but the most that Bows and Derry could get to is 62, which, if you do the maths, that kind of sums it up at this stage. But again, mentioning again I suppose the head-to-head record with Bows this season. There's the Aviva Stadium game, Richie. Then there is the comeback in Tala, where I think Shamrock Rovers at half-time, they think they're home and hosed, and then Alan Reynolds' position is kind of saved in a sense with 3 goals in the second half, completely remarkable. And then Bowes' brilliant performance in the Dalymount game where they essentially dominated things. So I wonder, how do you see this playing out? Because Bowes kind of have to go for it to an extent, because if they don't win, well, I mean, their chances of winning the league are fairly slim anyway, but if they don't win, it's all but over anyway.
Yeah, look, that's the last time Shamrock Rovers lost a game in the league was against Bowes, and it was the 23rd of June. So it was a long time ago. It was. I think you can see the consistency since then in Shamrock Rovers. And vice versa. I don't think Bows have been very consistent, to be honest. I think Stephen Bradley had the luxury of, he rested Rory Gaffney, Dylan Watts, Graham Burke. He rested them against Waterford. They only came on for maybe the last 20 odd minutes. So I'd say they'd be pretty fresh coming into this game now on Friday. Stephen Bradley will most definitely pick his strongest 11. I've no doubt about that. I think that's some of the reasoning behind some of the changes that he made against Waterford. It just makes for, I think they've sold over 8,000 tickets already. So it's going to make for an absolute fantastic advertisement for the League of Ireland. I think Stephen Bradley will use that a little bit as fuel to the fire that Bohemians have been so dominant over them so far this season. But they'll be under no illusion that they'll be nice and calm in their own performance. I don't think anything will change. Everybody knows how Shamrock Rovers play, how they approach the games, and vice versa. I think Alan Reynolds, he'll be really calm going into the game because I think they kind of know how to play against Shamrock Rovers. I know we said that they need to come out and win the game, but I don't think their game plan is going to change drastically over the last couple of games that they did play against Rovers. So it makes for an intriguing game, and it's probably the biggest game that we've had in a long time, the League of Ireland.
Yeah, and that's an 8 o'clock kickoff on Friday. The other fixtures this Friday: Galway United against Cork City, Shelbourne against Waterford, Drogheda United against Derry, which again plays a part in the title race, but also in the European race as well. And then on Saturday, Sligo Rovers at home against Pats, which has implications towards the top and the bottom. And we're almost finished, but one thing I will ask Paul is in terms of, I know I mentioned long throws earlier, and I kind of feel like if Rory Delap had been playing now, maybe he'd be a shoe-in for the Ballon d'Or based on how the direction of the game. But like, in fairness, Ousmane Dembele of PSG, who we've watched a lot on RTÉ recently in the Champions League, he went and won it last night. Do you look at that and kind of think it's like fair enough? I know these awards sort of they matter to some people and they don't matter to others. But is it kind of fair enough at this stage in terms of the candidates that were there?
Yeah, I think so. Like in my mind, it was between himself and Lamine Yamal, and I was just looking at some of the criteria there around how they actually decide on the voting, and some of that comes into team performances and achievements. And I think ultimately the fact that Paris Saint-Germain went on and won the Champions League, like they'd invested so heavily into that squad over the last number of years, like Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, they tried that route and it didn't work. And really what led to their success was Enrique having this sort of team ethos of everybody working really hard, and that was led very much from the front from Dembele, and that's maybe not something that a lot of people had seen in his game previously, where he's very much a team player and pressing from the front. Outside of that, like his ability on the ball is just ridiculous. The goal contributions that he had, the games that he scored in, particularly in the Champions League and the run to the final, were so important. And the ability to play off both feet, he can go past people, he can link play. He was fantastic last year, and I think only the fact that PSG went on and won the Champions League, I think that's the reason he got it, because if you look kind of down to the last number of years, you kind of need to be part of a side that is going deep into Europe or winning competitions in order to win that award. I think if Barcelona had beaten Inter Milan in that semi-final and then gone on and beaten PSG, it probably would have been Lamal's name on the trophy. But there'll be plenty for him. He's 17, 18 years of age. Scary to
Yeah.
think he has many years to come. But for Dembele and what he achieved last year, he's definitely a worthy winner.
Yeah, and we'll have more Champions League live on RT next week, obviously. But anyway, this week we didn't get a chance to record our weekly segment with Shelbourne's Rachel Graham, but hopefully we'll get a chance to do so before the end of what is a big week in the women's game. Shels and Athlone are involved in the top of the table game on Saturday, and Rachel has also been doing some homework on the new Women's Development League, which will kick off in 2026. You can read a little bit about that on the RT website. Just go to the LOI section. So keep an eye on podcast feeds for that if we get a chance to record with Rachel this week. But for now, thanks to Richie and Paul, and we'll be back for the next episode on Monday. Thanks a million, lads.
Cheers,
Cheers,
Raf.
Raf.
And slán go fóill.